from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome. This is Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. I am Reverend Charles Harrison, and on today's episode, I will be talking to the Republican candidate for Mayor, Jefferson Shreve, and we will be in conversation about this year's mayoral election in November. Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And this is Reverend Charles Harrison, and I'm one of the co-hosts of Real Talk. My co-host is not with me today, Reverend Terry Webster Sr. He is at a meeting today that he had to be at, so I am here today. And I have the pleasure of having someone that I've gotten to know over the last few months. He just said prior to us going on air, he's just been a politician for 8 months now?
8 months, yeah.
8 months now. Okay, 8 months, officially 8 months now, which is Jefferson Shreve. He is the Republican candidate for mayor here in Marion County. And welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's fun to do this.
Well, it is fun to do this, and we're just going to kind of have a general conversation. We have been having conversations, in the past, and just talk. First of all, tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and why you decided to run for mayor.
Yeah, well, I've been a politician for 8 months or so. I filed to run for mayor in February. And prior to that, my identity, my sense of self was as a business guy, a small business owner that grew something into a medium size and later into a pretty large business. And I had about a decade of service in and out of city government on the council and on the Metropolitan Development Commission. But what am I? I'm a son of the city. I was born here in Indianapolis. My mom and dad met in Center Township at the old Sacred Heart High School. Took me home to our house on Hannah Avenue. Lived in the north end of Perry Township. Lived in the south end of Lawrence Township. Went to IPS schools. I'm kind of a homegrown product. I went to IU down in Bloomington. Went up to Purdue in West Lafayette. And I've had the blessings of... How
did you end up at Purdue and IU?
Well,
I'm an IU graduate. I'm just trying to figure this out.
Yeah, well, I went to IU because a lot of my family members went there, and some have gone up to Purdue since. But I had this itch to get into farming for a period, and so I did an MBA in agribusiness. And there are like 2-3 places in the country you can do that.
Right.
And I owned some farm and ranch land for a period of time. People know I made some money in self-storage, but I also was in farming for several years, and that's what took me up to Purdue. And so that was a few years after the IU degree, but after I had started what became Storage Express. So, I've been really fortunate. This community, through a public education and our state universities, prepared and armed me to go out into the world and with a whole lot of mentorship, which is so important to young people, with a whole lot of mentorship along the way to kind of make it in this world.
Okay.
And so I've been blessed. And that also gave me, because I didn't have partners in my business after the first few years, I was running alone financially. It gave me the sovereignty to spend time that I wanted to spend doing some other things. I got really involved with IU. I chaired our alumni association, which is like 750,000 alumni strong.
Right.
And I got involved with a hospital association, a hospital system, and was on the board of that. That was fascinating. That was interesting. It made me realize how hard healthcare is compared to self-storage.
Right.
And I was elected a PC down in Perry Township. That was my first political role was as a precinct committee person.
Okay.
I got interested in politics though because I was a poli-sci undergrad down at IU, and I interned in D.C. Got to know Senator Lugar, Mayor Lugar, but Senator Lugar. When I got to know him, and how does someone become a Republican or a Democrat? Well, you kind of identify with people around you that you respect. And in my case, it was Senator Lugar, or today I'd say it was a Mitch Daniels Republican. I mean, that's my brand of Republicanism.
Okay.
My grandparents, on at least my mom's side here in town, were Democrats. They grew up in that area, FDR and all whatnot, and so most of us fall somewhere kind of in the spectrum, and parties change, and yet, I don't identify with everything of the Republican Party, but I say to my wife, they're not pushing me out.
Yeah.
I've got my beliefs and my views,
yes.
and I'm staying put, and that party may shift. The base may shift on me a little bit, but this is what I am, and these are some things that I stand for and believe. And I've got this opportunity to move my hometown forward, and it is a town that I care deeply about. I also have the time to do this,
right.
The resources to do it, at an inflection point when our city is, I am just sure, going in the wrong direction. And I'm also sure I'm not the only one that feels that way.
Right. So that really motivated you, that you're from Indianapolis, you feel like the city is going in the wrong direction. When did you decide that I'm going to do this? I'm going to run for mayor this time? What were the factors that just led you to say, well, I can no longer sit on the sideline. I need to get involved in trying to make the city better?
Well, the decision point was, I guess, right at the 1st of February, right before the deadline. I took inventory of who else had filed.
Right.
There were 10 people that put their name on the ballot, both sides. I mean, there were a whole lot of people that felt like, other than the incumbent, we could do a little better.
Right.
We needed to do better. We needed to go in a different direction. I took inventory of the cast of competing talent and came forward with the conviction that, look, I'm not the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I can offer more,
right.
experience-wise, background-wise, than the rest of the cast, and I'm going to compete. I may not win. The voters are going to make that decision, but I'm going to compete. And as it played out, the voters in my party advanced me to the big dance, and so I compete with Joe Hogsett on November 7th. Well, voting has already started, but November 7th, to lead this city. And I think that he's got an advantage. Everyone knows him. He's got a disadvantage. Everyone knows him. Not to say he's a bad guy, but he does have a record.
Right.
And third terms should be tough for mayors because you got to run on that record. And I think the record after 8 years is pretty thin.
So when you look at Mayor Joe Hogsett's record, and you think, and you just said it's pretty thin, what are you hearing from the residents of Marion County as you've been campaigning now for the last 8 months? What are the critical issues that people are saying where they think the city may be going in the wrong direction, and that you think you can, do a much better job than the current mayor?
It's thin in the sense that we aren't growing. I mean, we're flat. GDP growth over throughout his administration, about 1%. Population isn't growing. Central Indiana is, because people are moving out into the donut counties, and they're growing. But our city, Marion County, is just flat. And I think it's a function of people's sense of place, whether they feel safe, whether this is where they want to raise their kids. How many people move into Marion County for the quality of the schools? All these sorts of things that determine where people choose to make their home, whether they are choosing to move into or move out of. And then we got a whole lot of people that are just limited. I mean, they're stuck in place. They don't have the means to pick up and pull out, or they don't want to because their family is here. I mean, I'm not going anywhere. I could afford to go somewhere else, but this is my home. And so I'm here, and since I'm staying here, I'm just determined to make it better with this slice of my life ahead. When I can do this, I believe I know how to do this. I can't do it alone. The success of a Shreve administration is going to depend mightily on my ability to attract and surround myself with a team of talented men and women to stand up a government that can move us forward. And with determination. I think Mayor Hogsett's a great campaigner, but not been great at government. I mean, he's on the gas right now as a candidate. But if he's reelected to what he said will be his final term, I think he's coasting. And I'll tell you what, if I'm elected, my foot's on that accelerator straight on through. I mean, I'm in this to win this and to get something done.
Well, certainly, what I hear, certainly crime has to be up there as one of the top issues in the city, and particularly where I live at, where I work at, where I pastor. Certainly that is a major issue, and I think people are concerned about that. Certainly roads, the condition of the roads in the city, the issues of economic development, and you just talked about schools. What would the Shreve's administration look like when it came to addressing those issues, and particularly what can the mayor's office do when it comes to improving the quality of education, with there being a school board and superintendent of schools? How do you envision that as the mayor?
Well, I think that public safety I think there are two principal components that would motivate a citizen to leave their neighborhood, their township, or the county.
Okay.
If they don't feel safe at night where they lay their head, they're going to look for safer options if they have that mobility. And the other are pathways to quality education.
Okay.
If you've got school-age kids,
yes,
you're going to make that home decision based on the availability of quality education pathways. And so the mayor does directly control IMPD from a budgetary and staffing standpoint. He doesn't directly control IPS. You've got a governing board, but the mayor does have the Office of Education and Innovation,
okay,
and the council that I served on also has the Committee on Education. The mayor is a chartering authority for schools in Marion County. It's one of the chartering bodies. It's the most active, and if we think about parents and students as voters, they vote with their feet toward schools that deliver quality outcomes. And within the boundaries of IPS, the majority have voted to move out of the district schools and into our choice or innovation schools. The dollars are the same to them. They're going to the schools that deliver better outcomes. And so the mayor's office has influence, actually control over the chartering ability for those schools, or a number of those schools, and the responsibility. So you've got authority and responsibility to ensure quality outcomes. Not all charters or choice schools are created equally, and the strong performers need to flourish,
okay,
and the weak performers need to be thin from the pack. But we got to do that humanely, because sometimes we shut down these schools that underperform at the 11th hour. And
okay,
kids and families think they're going to be going to this school, that school, and 2 or 3 weeks before the school year starts, they're shutting it down. So we've got to strike that balance of delivering quality outcomes with publicly funded education within the boundaries of IPS, and recognize that the challenge is going to grow more broadly over the next 4 years, a Shreve administration, if you will, with our township schools too.
Okay.
Because the General Assembly last year, they raised the income threshold through which vouchers could follow the students. And so Perry Township schools were generally pretty good, but a lot of students that were in Perry schools will be able to take those dollars and port them over to, say, a parochial school like Roncalli.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I was talking to Chuck Weisenbach, who's the president of Roncalli, at something recently, and he's going to feel pressure to expand his high school, okay, because there'll be more kids with those voucher dollars that otherwise would come from families that are earning too much to have qualified, that will move over to Roncalli and out of Southport or Perry Meridian. So what I'm saying is the challenge of delivering quality education is not just going to be within the boundaries of IPS, but the township schools or countywide. My wife grew up in Washington Township. My father-in-law was an associate superintendent at Washington Township schools for years. And so, this is just something that I know about from being around it. Both my wife and I have parents that were in education, public education, and a mayor has to get this right as much as he or she does public safety. I think those are the two most important things.
When it comes to, is there a big difference in the quality of education in the townships versus IPS? I mean, you normally hear a lot of negative things about, IPS and the quality of education, but I think there's some unique challenges that IPS has.
There's no doubt.
Maybe some of the townships don't have. Yes.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean,
Okay.
the playing field isn't level.
Okay.
But we want to level it out.
Okay.
Because young people, as people are growing up in this county, we want them to have equal quality opportunities for an education.
Okay.
I mean, I went to plain Jane IPS schools.
Okay.
It's just a function of my age. I didn't have all these other choices. But the system worked for me.
Okay.
I mean, I'm
Okay.
thankful for it.
Right,
I mean,
right.
public education worked for me.
Right,
And I
right.
want to preserve that option, but I want to give our parents the option of choice because they'll be the best arbiters of quality.
So does choice apply to private schools? I have two kids. They're in high school now at Shortridge, but probably one of the best places that my kids early on went to school was a school called Building Blocks. Reminded me of the old schools, and I'm talking about my age when I grew up. The kind of education that was being taught. The problem was, it became very expensive, to keep both of those kids in that school. I would have preferred to kept those children my two kids in that school prior to them going into junior high. But I think for a lot of parents, that becomes a real issue.
Yep. It sure does. But, you're a smart, engaged, educated parent. And so you offer that blessing to your children.
Yes.
And a lot of young people in our county grow up in households that aren't equally blessed.
Right,
and
right.
So we recognize that reality and have to buttress the absence of that with quality schools. And this is another great challenge that we have both in Marion County and broadly. We have a shortage of police officers and nurses. We certainly have a shortage of teachers.
Right.
Young people, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, decreasingly think about, I'm going to go to high school, then to college, so I can become a teacher. We've made the profession less attractive.
Right.
And so we've got to attract young talent into that profession, just as we do in policing, just as we do in nursing, and compensate them fairly.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison, and my guest today is Jefferson Shreve, a candidate for mayor in Indianapolis this year. We talked a little bit about the issue of public safety, and certainly we have seen since 2015 probably the highest level of violence over that 8 or 9 year period of time that we have seen in the history of Indianapolis. We had about 4 consecutive years of record-breaking violence, and certainly the last 4 years, because I think we're going to eclipse 200 homicides again this year, the highest level of violence in the history of the city. A lot of people have a lot of opinions about how to address it. How do you see the challenge of what Indianapolis is facing? And there's a lot of cities I know that's facing, rises in violence, but there's some cities that haven't. So what's been going on in Indianapolis, and how do you see addressing that issue as the mayor of Indianapolis if you're elected by the voters?
Yeah, so some cities are paralleling us in this rise in violence, but it's a cop-out to say this is just the way it is everywhere and needs to be, because other cities have turned this around and are doing better than we can, and we need to do better. And yeah, the past 4 years have been awful. And yeah, if we annualize where we are today, we'll be over 200 homicides. But it was last week, Superintendent Doug Carter from this ISP said we pass a 900 mark in terms of shootings and stabbings. So The difference between a homicide and a non-fatal shooting is maybe a fraction of an inch as to where a bullet lands relative to an artery or an organ.
Right.
And the miraculous work that we do at Eskenazi with so many gunshot victims, and let's not lose sight of all the stabbing victims in this city.
Right.
So we'll be over 200 again on homicides, but we're coming up on 1,000 in terms of shootings and stabbings in this county, and that's no way for us to live. I think we've become almost numb to it. We see these stories on Channel 13 and Channel 59 every morning, every night, and we lose track of them. It just becomes part of the background. And if we're living in a city where that's just background noise and we accept that, ladies and gentlemen, we've given up too much. We've moved in the wrong direction. So, reining that in, a Mayor Shreve can't fix it, isn't going to come into the job and stop it overnight. But I'll be determined to move those benchmark metrics down in terms of homicide counts, non-fatal shooting counts down, the solve rate on violent offenses up, moving our staffing for the public safety force up to acceptable levels. I'll do that hand in hand with a public safety director.
So you would bring the public safety director back?
I said that throughout. I mean, that is just such a no-brainer, and yet Mayor Hogshead's continued to hold course on being his own public safety director. I've said time and again, every mayor in modern Indianapolis since Unigov has had benefit of that public safety executive that lives and breathes this space.
Right.
The mayor's job's huge. I mean, in terms of the subject matter. And I listened to your podcast with Mayor Ballard a while back. I know he and probably every other living mayor would share this view that you've got to have that civilian executive that is going to wake up and go to bed focused on those metrics of police, fire, and EMS that we've got to manage to improve upon in Indianapolis. And so, yes, I would not only bring that position back, it'd be the first or second most critical or important hire of this administration. And it's the talent. I said this earlier. It's the talent that a mayor surrounds him or herself with that determines the success of an administration and, therefore, the success of our city.
So one of the other issues is the issue of policing. And certainly we have lost a lot of police over the years. And I'm trying to assess myself what has been the impact of the whole Black Lives Matter movement and defund the police. And it seems to be having a negative impact on policing. And I know IMPD's been having a tough time in recruiting the United States Police and departments across the country. How do you think we can address that as a city in Annapolis? And as the mayor, what role do you see the public playing and leaders like myself in helping to address this shortage?
Our community needs to let our officers know that we support back and appreciate them. And I know broadly that we do, but I was at the IMPD budget hearing introduction a couple weeks ago, and public testimony at the end of a 4-hour committee hearing. Every speaker that came to the podium spoke in opposition to the proposed budget level that was put forward. They felt like it was too large. I was stunned. I sat there through 4 hours, and at the end of that, all the public testimony was in opposition to the level of funding
that
the IMPD was requesting in an environment where we so clearly need these resources. And there is that element of defunding or reducing the funding for public safety in our community. And that's not how I feel, and that's not what I would advocate for, but it does still exist. Look, we all want to live in safe neighborhoods. We all want to live in a civil city.
Right.
But not everyone agrees in terms of the funding of these resources.
I have been an outspoken advocate, against what I consider the Marion County broken judicial system, and certainly myself and Rick Snyder in 2019 in a press conference downtown recognize that unless we fix that, we saw another surge of violence coming in the city of Indianapolis. And I'm not for sure what role the mayor can play in helping address, particularly the broken judicial system when it comes to repeat violent offenders who tend to get arrested and arrested again, and they continue to commit violent acts, and tragically, sometimes they end up being the victim or perpetrator of a murder, or they're a suspect in a shooting that seriously injured someone. What is the role of the mayor? Because I think a lot of people are frustrated by this broken judicial system, and we don't know exactly where to turn other than trying to get people to vote the right way in voting in a different prosecutor, but we're unsure about the judges.
The mayor's got the biggest mouthpiece.
Okay.
Everyone has at least this notion as to what the mayor does.
Right.
Most people on the streets couldn't tell you who our prosecutor was. Most people couldn't tell you who serves on the bench. But people know the mayor.
Right.
And the mayor's got the mouthpiece and needs to use it.
Okay.
I agree with your position and with Rick Schneider, and with Superintendent Carter, who just last week said, maybe 2 weeks ago, but he just doubled down on his statement that we need a complete overhaul
right.
and review of our judicial system.
Absolutely.
Because it's not working. He spoke with such emotion for a man that has given his life, his career, to public safety. I find him, in his statements, his testimony, so compelling.
Right.
I agree.
Right.
And I issued a statement just in agreement, and I doubled down on that statement. We have a broken system. The mayor directly controls, from a budgetary standpoint, the biggest slice of the pie. The mayor's got to develop the budget for our IMPD, and they make up the biggest component of the public safety portion of our general fund. But they can't do their job if the other players, the other actors in the public safety system, the prosecutor, the judiciary, and even the sheriff's department, don't do their jobs.
Right.
And so Mayor Shreve is going to use that mouthpiece to say, in this case, gentlemen,
right,
you've got to do your jobs so our force can do its job, so we don't have this revolving door of repeat violent offenders.
Right.
And, it was just yet another example of that Superintendent Carter cited 10 days or so ago, that I heard the man swear. I don't think I'd ever heard Superintendent Carter swear before. And so, you just do not hear Mayor Hogsett coming out in support of or lending his voice to this egregious shortfall in the system. Maybe it's because he's a Democrat and the other actors in the system are also Democrats.
Okay.
But you got to call a spade a spade.
Right,
And you've got to encourage the other people that are part of the system to do their jobs that they were elected or are paid to do, so the public safety system can work for the citizens of Indianapolis.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison, and my guest today is Jefferson Shreve, candidate for mayor of Indianapolis this year. One of the other issues that I wanted to kind of talk about is that I think there's a lot of frustration for residents in the urban core when it comes to the kind of investments that we're seeing being made in the city, and there seems to be a lot of dollars and investment put into downtown. We don't tend to see those same kind of investment, or at least it's our perception, in the urban core areas. And in a lot of those areas, you don't have drugstores, you don't have grocery stores in our neighborhoods, but we see millions and millions of dollars being invested downtown. As the mayor, how would you address those concerns that residents have, that it seems like a lot of dollars are being put into in building up downtown, but the urban areas seem to be in decline?
Well, I'd acknowledge that perception is real, and I understand why people would be unhappy about that. I'd say that our downtown is our shared neighborhood. We might live in Lawrence or Pike Township, but we invest disproportionately in our downtown because it is our common ground in terms of amenities, sports facilities, points of civic pride that everyone in Indianapolis and beyond can share in. And so it does get outsized attention. It bothers me. Spark has been an interesting experiment, and I said, okay, we'll do this on the circle. But Spark is pristine and safe. Yeah. But I see 2 squad cars parked there all the time.
Right.
And I see the green team there, 3 fellows, keeping it tidy and sweeping it up. It's 1,200 square feet.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
If we had those sorts of resources at Garfield Park, or all around this, all the other parks in this city, it'd be a very different environment.
Right.
But that's not the case. And so I understand why people feel like downtown gets an unfair share of attention and dollars and resources, and it needs to be spread around equitably.
But can it? I mean, can what's preventing investments in areas like MLK, other areas in the city where I live in Mapleton Fall Creek. We don't have a grocery store, so we have to travel a distance to just go to a grocery store. What as a businessman, what are some of the challenges that we're facing that a mayor could help address?
So real estate and consumer patterns are changing broadly.
Okay.
A mayor of a city cannot change that in and of him or herself.
Okay.
You got to recognize those consumer patterns, the Amazon effect, the hollowing out of what were CVS stores or Walgreens. They can't all become dollar stores.
Right.
And you can't properly grocery shop at a dollar store.
Right.
But I think we've got a whole lot of kind of mid-sized empty retail boxes that are close to these areas that we would describe as food deserts or even pharmacy deserts that could be repurposed to attract compact grocers. If we can set up some defined, predictable economic redevelopment incentives for the owners of the real estate, and the owners of the real estate aren't companies like Walgreens or CVS; they're private investors.
Right.
Let's say to everyone that's got one of those empty, non-property tax generating stores, if you can bring in a compact grocer, we'll offer you a 5-year property tax abatement without having to go through a year of hearings and hiring a real estate firm to represent you before the city. We'll have a package of incentives to reopen some of these disused mid-sized or smaller retail boxes that we have all around this city, but especially in our food deserts, and put them back into productive use so we can offer avenues, pathways to fresh foods, vegetables, produce. Typically, those are located in areas that are on public transportation. Some are in areas where there are sidewalks. But we only have sidewalks on, less than a third of the streets of Indianapolis. So, as a real estate person, my background is in real estate. I think that we'd have to put a lot of attention in finding good adaptive reuse for empty retail spaces that we have all around the city. And we've got great big empty parking lots around, like Lafayette Square Mall, places
Absolutely.
like that.
Yes.
And I want to see those develop. And my aim would be to attract multifamily housing development in those areas because the infrastructure is there. They are on corridors where we have good public transportation, and because the school systems were sized to accommodate more people than are living there now, those are where I want to see the investment in creating a greater supply of housing. Our housing rates keep going up. They were up 8% over the past year, and there are a lot of drivers for that, but at the end of the day, it's supply and demand. There's not enough supply of affordable, quality housing to meet demand. And because they're out of sync, you see 8% year-over-year increases in rents. Well, most people's household income isn't growing at 8%.
That's true.
We've got to normalize that, and we've got to remove some of the bureaucratic barriers and uncertainty that exist in the Department of Business and Neighborhood Services that Joe Hogsett recrafted several years ago from the old DCE. There's got to be more predictability in the system, and we've got to be able to get more space up more quickly, more predictably, with less bureaucratic and costly layers, so we can create that housing stock that people need.
Is Indianapolis now really competing with some of the donut cities around Indianapolis, Carmel, Fishers, Noblesville, Brownsburg, when it comes to, we have touched on a lot of different issues. You've kind of said the city's kind of flattened out, population-wise and stuff. Is it because there's more competition around us with some of these other cities around Indianapolis?
Hadn't kind of flattened out. It has flattened out.
Okay.
And yes, it's because other community leaders are doing a better job than we are.
Okay. In what ways? What ways that you would change as the mayor?
Yeah. Well, it's not just Tony Carmel, but you get across the county line into Cumberland. Or down into Greenwood. I think that our Republican mayoral leadership in our donut counties is working cooperatively with their council and with the General Assembly to get some good things done, and to attract citizens with lower taxes. Tax rates are lower in Carmel than they are in Marion County, despite the quality of the schools, the quality of the roads. The income tax that people pay are lower up there. If we move our tax rates up any more here, we're just going to accelerate that out-migration to communities such as that. We've got to. So
why we keep raising the tax rate then?
Because we are inefficient in the delivery of services that we're taxing our citizens. In my opinion, as a business person, I mean, you've got to be efficient in getting in delivering on services. It takes us too long to do things. I think about. I've been, the red line ran through my council district that I used to represent. We literally drove some of the merchants along Virginia Avenue out of business because it took us so long to get some of the bus stops developed along there.
Same thing on College.
Yeah,
where I live at. Where I live at.
And now on the Purple Line, we're at the halfway mark, 2 years into it. And we're down to one lane each direction. We've got crews working maybe 7 hours a day. Right. But we've got cones up and traffic restrictions and access blocked. Right. Cities have to move at the speed of business if they're going to be efficient and deliver services to citizens. And this city can take lessons from communities around us, but mostly lessons from private industry. And sometimes it just makes sense to maybe pay more to run 2 shifts and get projects done in half the time, or to paper the contracts where there are bonuses for early delivery and completion of services and penalties for the slow delivery of services. Right in front of the city-county building. How long did it take us to re-brick Market Street there? I mean, it just went on and on. Yeah. And at what cost? Well, we've hollowed out the city market. With vendors that were installed there for decades, less than half of which are there today. We've also hollowed out the city-county building with the move to the CJC. And I know that there is a plan to repopulate it as we reconsolidate some other city offices. But if we do that at the pace at which this administration, the Hogsett administration, has moved over the last few years, our downtown, that part of downtown, will just get more and more bleak.
Was the red line and the purple line that they're now building a good investment? It doesn't seem like to me a lot of people are on the red line, and I live right off of 38th and College, and I'm always driving back and forth. I just don't see a lot of people using the bus.
Oh, I don't see the utilization either. So
Yes.
In my council district, it would end down at UIndy, and so as I go up that corridor all the time, I mean, I see so few bodies on the red line at different times of the day. And it never was going to be a good investment from the standpoint of return on cost.
Okay.
We were aiming for about a 1/3, recovering about 1/3 of the operating cost, and I doubt that we recover 1/10 of the operating cost.
Wow.
There's no fair enforcement mechanism.
Okay.
You can ride the red line as much as you want. I mean, there's no fair enforcement mechanism. But even with that free element, people choose not to. It's not reliable. Indigo doesn't have the consistent staffing levels to offer the reliability that users would want. The batteries on the buses that we ordered from China never met performance, and so the rolling stock hasn't consistently been in service. No, it's been a disappointment. I think bus rapid transit was a great idea 30 or 40 years ago. But I think our citizens want point-to-point transportation, and that we could deliver a better alternative to that today by way of electronic vouchers for citizens on a fixed income, older citizens or a certain income level, so they could use services like Lyft and Uber to get point-to-point for less money than it will cost to build out these hardwired systems. The blue line has been shortened quite a bit and has been on and off. It's like $220 million over its original budget. It's a travesty. If we'd gotten this done 30, 40 years ago, I wouldn't be preaching this view. But I feel like it's an inefficient system that we are investing in and will be paying for the next 40 years that isn't going to serve our citizens well for the next 40 years.
One final question before I let you go. You made a statement, and not a lot of politicians did, concerning what happened in Israel. I really appreciate your courage on that. You want to kind of share why you decided you felt like you needed to make a statement about what had happened in this whole issue. I know there was some protests yesterday for and against, but I could sense that you felt a need to really say something.
Yeah, so I'm a fellow running for mayor of Indianapolis, but we have citizens from all over the world in this city, and that diversity makes our city stronger. Okay, I'm entirely an advocate for free speech. This isn't up for debate. Free speech is hardwired into our system. Right. But hate crimes, the murderous work of Hamas, do we let a group associated with that convene on Monument Circle, and that's a combination of both city and state property. And do we, as a city or as city leaders, stand silent or impartial in our view of that? I don't think we should. I mean, I'm a private citizen with opinions, and I think that what Hamas did to the people of Israel was simply criminal. So, I've taken a statement as a private citizen, but it pains me under the aegis of free speech to see them, or some people that identify with that group, congregate, rally at the epicenter of our city and state.
Thank you so much for this conversation today, and for sharing that today. Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison, and join me next time as I bring more Real Talk about the real issues that affect our community here in Indianapolis and across the country. Be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast and share it on Facebook and Twitter. This is Rev Harrison, and I pray that you have a blessed and an awesome day.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.